Hello, dear viewer. My name is Michael A. Delitala, joining you for another YouTube installment. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be a speaker at the American Strategic Portfolio Management in Life Sciences here on the West Coast. It'll be in San Diego. For anybody who subscribes currently, I hope to see you there. Um, so what this video will be is a dry rehearsal, a dress rehearsal of sorts, to make sure my messaging is on point and I'm able to use PowerPoint appropriately and things of this nature. I hope you like my new logo, Delitala Quality Consulting. And my motto in this business is simplicity breeds compliance. And so anyway, I'm going to welcome everybody in this regard. I'm going to do a little bit of an icebreaker. Three things about me to break the ice. Number one, I have two of the sweetest French bulldogs in the planet, named Romulus and Tuvok. This is Tuvok, and this is Romulus. Tuvok is an elder Frenchie of nearly 13 years old and is the reason we have all of the friends and all of the things that we have today. She's just the sweetest. She's a little human trapped inside this little dog body. Seriously, she knows like 1,000 commands and she's doing well for an old lady. Then we have Romulus, and she is 2 years old. She's just a sweet baby, a little snuggle bug. Um, and obviously, with those two names, I've revealed that I'm a Trekkie. I'm a big Star Trek fan. You may recall that Tuvok is the Vulcan security guard on the Voyager series, and that Romulus is a planet, a distant cousin of the Vulcans. You might like to know that I've been to 48 of 50 states. I've not been to Maine and Alaska. And also, I've been on 6 of 7 continents. I have yet to reach Antarctica. You're welcome to copy and paste my contact information. There's my email address, my phone number. You can email me and text me, and I can give you a copy of this presentation. My website, booksbymichaeldelitala.com, which has all of the books. We can connect on LinkedIn. You can view me here on the YouTube channel, and you can even go to my authors page, which does have all of the books. My website does not, but Amazon does. All right. Um, a little bit about me. My name is Michael A. Delitala. I'm very humbled to be presenting to you today. I hope you find this to be a very stimulating and fulfilling presentation. I have a professional Master of Science in Biomedical Laboratory Operations from Michigan State University. I've worked in this industry for over 30 years. I've worked in two of the largest pharma companies on the planet, that being Gilead and Amgen. You might like to know I'm a veteran, and I started in the industry as a scientist at the United States Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, USAMRIID, or RID for short. I've worked in a CMO for a startup company making early phase vaccines for Ebola, Marburg, prostate cancer, and cervical cancer. I've been in QC, manufacturing, QA operations, quality systems, and quality compliance. I've worked with early phase products and commercial products. I've worked with the first of its kind twice now in the immunotherapy space, that being Dendreon for the first of its kind Sipuleucel T immunotherapy product, and Kite for the first of its kind CAR T products. I'm mostly known for being a compliance guy, and I'm usually named the owner of the quality management system and have implemented the computerized quality management system at 4 unique places. Today, I am the CEO of Accenture, which is a Bitcoin investment company. More to come on that in the later announcement. I'm also the CEO of Delitala Quality Consulting and Author Corporation. If you're curious, you can look me up on Amazon and see that in the last 5 months, I published 2 series of text, making up 12 total books so far. I've got about another 50 on the way. I have a lot to say about quality. I'm a biologics kind of guy. I stay very far away from GCP and medical device. And I'm also a project manager. I'm also the kind of guy who goes out and understands all aspects of the business model. This means I'm not your normal quality systems and compliance guy. I'm not a stoic. I'm not going to spank you with observations. If I do spank you with an observation, I'm going to sit with you side by side and help you come up with a solution. In other words, I'm going to help you actually continuously improve something. If you have any questions today, it's likely I'll be able to have an answer on the tip of my tongue, given that I've done this for 30 years already. And also in that regard, I'm kind of known as a rebel in the quality space. Translation. I know where I can help us take the risk. I know what's defensible. And because I know what's defensible, I'm known as the closer in inspections, and I don't get observations. But if we do something where it could be observational, I would let you know, and therefore we wouldn't be able to take the risk. Otherwise, I'm a push the button kind of guy. So yeah, let's take the risk. I already got a plan for how we can defend it. By the way, this is very informal. So if you got any questions, come on in and ask away. All right. This presentation is about what is quality and how do you instill it. Today's presentation provides the framework, I'm calling it the framework, to implement quality in all pharma companies. As you already know, my motto is simplicity breeds compliance. What do I mean? Simplicity breeds compliance. Complex things cost a lot of money because they tend to have a lot of deviations, kappas, and change controls initiated against them. Simple things tend to have none of that. Therefore, simplicity breeds compliance, which is best for business because things will cost less and the overhead of quality won't be so much. Therefore, you'll be more profitable. This applies to all industries, all, all positions, and all tasks within all industries. I really wish people would believe me when I say that. I could save you so much money. Call me up. Today's presentation will provide, in a very easy to understand format, how quality is implemented in pharma companies. By the end of the presentation, I'll actually have it all in process flow diagram format. Now, I say pharma companies, but there is an exception. Medical device companies. Listen, I'm not a big fan of CFR 820. I understand the necessity for it, but it's not for me. So if you're part of a medical device company, I mean you no offense. This presentation, maybe by the end of it, it may not be for you. I think there are a lot of things here that will still work for a medical device, but mostly this will be for drug substance, drug product, small molecule, biologics, immunotherapy. All right? All right, let's move on. Instilling quality starts with ICH Q10 and the quality manual. A short note regarding compliance. Anyone want to take a stab at what the word compliance means or what it means to be compliant? Oftentimes there is a problem and less experienced staff run to their quality partners screaming, "Oh my God, we're out of compliance. Oh no, we're out of compliance." Anyone ever, anyone ever have this happen to them? Here's what compliance means. Quality by Delitala definition for compliance. Compliance means following the regulations, the law. Compliance also means meeting your own internal standards, which are the company's policies and standard operating procedures. That's what compliance is. Simple. Now, why does quality start with ICH Q10? In short, because the regulators say so. Basically, the introduction of ICH Q10, which is up on your screen, a little bit small, I don't expect you to read it. It basically says, based on the phase of your product, if you meet the requirements, which they disguise as guidance, herein, then you'll be compliant. And more importantly, you'll have a product that is safe for patients and of high quality. I would argue, now people will debate me on this and people will say I'm absolutely incorrect, but I would argue that ICH Q10 is actually quality by design in detail. So there is quality by design conceptually and theoretically. I believe ICH Q10 is quality by design with words and instructions and requirements. So you can't get quality wrong if you comply to every single aspect of ICH Q10. In fact, I make this argument in Quality by Delitala Volume 1, the quality manual. Now, without gratuitously advertising here, I'm just going to be factual. My volumes on quality, they do something all of the other resources about quality do not do. They give you the answer. So in Volume 1, the quality manual, you go to the back of the book, You could literally do a copy and paste of my version of the quality manual and replace it with your company's name, and you would have the most compliant quality manual on the planet. I know, but that's not ego. That's the reality. So, how does this work? Here we go. So it should be very clear that ICHQ10 and implementing a quality manual is not instilling quality. It's just the first step. Okay. Um, ICHQ10 requires the following things, and I'm not going to go into detail on all of this, but a lot of areas that companies have an error in their quality manual is with management responsibility. ICHQ10 is very clear on management accountability and oversight. It's in literally every single section of ICHQ10. Um, that said, companies are hesitant to build management responsibility into the SOPs that govern the quality management system. I don't know why, other than perhaps they get a question during an inspection. How do you ensure management is providing this responsibility? And the most defensible answer to that question is through our quality management review, right? A quality management review will be checking on the health and the pulse of the quality management system, as I like to say, and within it demonstrates management oversight and responsibility. But a lot of companies, particularly startup, this has been my experience. I will introduce management responsibility to the deviation SOP, to the kappa SOP, et cetera. And I get laughed out of the room. You can't do that, they say. They say, you're in charge of quality systems and compliance, therefore you are the management and the management responsibility. I can't even make this up. Inevitably, that company goes to their biennial, I apologize, to their pre-approval inspection and gets spanked with 43s throughout the full of the QMS. And then they usually call me back and say, hey, Mike, can you help us build this in there? We should have listened to you. Yes, no problem. I would be happy to. Um, Another aspect of what's required that gets overlooked is knowledge management. And here I will bring the requirement up. You're welcome to read it. Um, I've only worked at one very large pharma company that actually had a quality system and program in place for knowledge management. It's not really well understood how to implement a quality management system for knowledge management. Trust me, it will be a future volume of Quality by Delitala. That said, I'm conveying that you should hurry up. You should pitch to your leadership that you need a knowledge management quality system. Why? Here it's required by ICHQ10. It's also an enabler of risk management and the quality management system. Um, and I'd like to show you, here's an excerpt from QBD Volume 1. This is what a good overview of knowledge management looks like within the quality management system, and specifically within the quality manual. So take a look through that. Um, I find that to be the best paragraph or two of the full QBD Volume 1, the quality manual book. All right. All right, so now that you have your quality manual in place, the next step is to define the firm's product and phase of the product. I get laughed out of the room for this too. But if I took a poll about everybody in the audience to tell me what kind of product they had and what phase of it is, and let's say there are two people who work at the same company, their answers will be different. It's mind-boggling, right? This is critical though. Whenever I land a consulting gig or start at a new firm, one of the first things I attempt to understand about the business is what kind of products do we have and what phase of the life cycle are we in for each. If you don't know this, then you can't be compliant. The reason for understanding this is so that you can be sure you're following the right regulations, whether it's CBER, CDER, both, or gene therapy regulations. You have to know what the product is in order to be able to comply to the right rules. I know this is basic, but companies get this grossly incorrect. I can't tell you how many biologics companies I've joined only to find that they're following 820 regulations for medical device. It's absurd. And then when you're junior associate director, Mike, and you bring it to their attention, they laugh you out of the room. That is until they get an observation, and hopefully Mike is still at the company by then to help them fix it. At the last place I worked, I was very sorry to inform them that they were a gene therapy company and that they were grossly out of compliance to gene therapy laws, particularly Europe. European gene therapy laws are quite rigorous for very good reasons. I mean, you are literally altering genes, so this makes sense. I informed them, unfortunately, to my detriment. And that's all I have to say about that. All right. The next step is define all of the regulations that are applicable to the product and facility. Oftentimes, companies use all of the regulations for all regulatory bodies and build them into the tome of their policies and procedures. Um, Although your intent is great, it's really overly rigorous, extremely short-sighted, and not simple at all. Therefore, there is too large of a burden. It costs too much to do that. Everything becomes a mistake if you're trying to apply all of the laws from all regulatory bodies. So you have too many deviations, which lead to too many kappas, which lead to too many changes. So only comply to the laws that you need to comply to and keep it simple, right? From there, you're going to complete a gap assessment. Now, it's likely you're at a stage where you already have all of the policies and procedures in place. That's great. The next step is to complete a gap assessment where you compare the existing body of documents to the defined laws from the previous step based on the defined product, facility, and life cycle stage. So if there are gaps, my recommendation is to initiate a kappa and manage the caps through the kappa process. Kappas are mini projects, so they should have a kappa owner who is a project manager. It should have milestones, actions, due dates, and action owners, and there should be periodic reviews to check in on the status of them. That said, if there are no gaps, then whoever owns your QMS did a really nice job, and you should go and shake their hand and say thank you because they have the most difficult job at your company and they never get any thanks for it. Seriously. All right. Now that you have effective policies and procedures in place, this actually represents the control of the quality management system, the control of it. Hopefully, you have some kind of document hierarchy like this. You can see it starts with the quality manual, then it leads into the policy, which defines the what requirements. Then it leads into standard operating procedures and work instructions, which gives you the how, who, when requirements taken from the what. And then things are documented, of course, in our industry. I would actually argue we don't manufacture product, we document the manufacture of product. That's really the business of pharmaceutical companies. So they're in forms and records. Hopefully you have some kind of hierarchy of this because this actually is the control of the QMS. And in a tangent note, we are still not yet instilling quality. Okay, we are implementing quality, but it is not yet instilled. So how do you instill quality? Through training. In my Quality by Delitala Volume 4 book, which is aptly titled Solving Problems Like a Pro, I tell a story about how when I was the head of training, how alarming it was to me that everyone forgets the most downstream of all the quality management systems, that being training. That everyone forgets training when they're planning for anything. I would argue that training is how quality is instilled. No one is allowed to do anything. No one is allowed to complete any GMP activities. Nobody is allowed to get any access to the quality management system until they have fulfilled the requirements in a training curriculum before they go and execute. So training is how quality is instilled, but only after you complete all of these previous steps. Pharma companies today need a modern approach to training because it's very expensive. Conservative folks in quality want a whole lot of on-the-job training, and they want a whole lot of instructor-led training. Those forms of training are super expensive. When I was leading trainings at Kite, I would say it cost the company $1 million a year. So a very simple solution to that is to create a self-paced web-based training that has a very rigorous quiz for one to complete. I estimated that I eliminated $6 million annually per all of the sites by introducing web-based trainings for the quality management system. There are other great things too, like WalkMe. You can implement WalkMe into Viva and Digital TrackWise, and it literally guides you step by step. I like to do the beep, boop, 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 boop. You push the button, beep, boop, 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 and it does what you need it to do without you having to do anything. It's pretty remarkable. So, again, training is how we instill quality. And I would argue that pharma companies need a modern approach to it because we have a new generation and a new workforce who learns completely different than all previous generations. So, once training is verified, then execution of tasks occur, which has quality oversight and is checked and maintained by the quality management system. And all of that together, particularly those last three steps in general, that's how you implement, instill, and ensure continuous improvement of quality. But that's not all. I'm forgetting something extremely significant to this process. And if you're a good quality partner, this occurs in parallel to the process. And it also feeds the process at about the quality manual and gap assessment stage. What am I referring to? Business requirements. This is where I get my reputation for being somewhat of a rebel in quality. I promote this idea that best business practices equate to a high degree of quality. It has to. There's no choice. These two concepts, business and quality, they must be married together in order to have a successful business. It's the only way it can possibly work. Now, how do you do that? How do you marry these two concepts? Because, there's all these stories about here. I got to work with my quality guy, and he's not easy to work with. And, all he wants to do is correct grammar. That's his version of quality. And you're absolutely right. Most quality partners are like that, and it's unfortunate. They need a super smart supervisor to help them get over that, by the way. And what I'm about to show you next comes from Quality by Delitala Volume 4. It is my process for how to build the user requirements from the business into the quality user requirements. All right, so to obtain the business requirements, first and foremost, you need to meet with senior leadership to get voice of the customer feedback. Then I recommend you meet with 25% of the user community for voice of the customer feedback as well. The user community, by the way, is split into two factions. Faction 1 is those who have used the QMS the most. Faction 2 is those who have used the QMS the least. You'll get very, very disparate feedback from both of those user communities, but all of it is good towards the end of continuous improvement. So what do you do with the feedback? You aggregate the total feedback to identify noticeable patterns in the data. What that means is somebody might say something, and somebody else might say exactly the same thing. Now that it's a recurring event, because there are two, that's a noticeable pattern in the data that you should explore further and take an action on. Next, evaluate the quality management system elements against all known but relevant regulations, and of course, ICH Q10. Then propose a plan and changes to senior leadership to obtain endorsements to make change. Revise the program as endorsed and obtain stakeholder feedback for any proposed revisions. And then the most critical aspect of all of this is you must change manage this with the user community and leadership. And it follows a what's in it for me type presentation. This allows the user community to adopt it faster. Anytime you change something in any SOP, someone out there somewhere may need to change something in the business, some metric they were measuring, some key performance indicator. Who knows what it is, but they might need to change something and it will take time. So they need time to understand the change, adopt it, manifest it, implement it, and then train on it. So there needs to be enough time for that in order to allow for a successful implementation of any changes you're making. What is this thing that I'm referring to as voice of the customer feedback? Voice of the customer feedback is something that I've learned over time where I complete a little bit of appreciative inquiry, what's working well, and a little bit of continuous improvement. and I sprinkle these things into a natural one-on-one with the user community and leadership that I'm meeting within the first 90 days of doing anything with the quality management system. So what that does is it allows me to build a relationship with somebody. They see me as a quality compliance guy who cares versus a quality compliance guy who is a stoic and just wants to spank you with observations, which then further makes them want to come to me later when they actually have real problems that we need to work through. Um, so what's working well? Why do we ask that question? We ask that question because if it's like this. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So if it's working well and people like something about the quality management system, you want to keep that in place. Don't change that. That's gold. Um, for continuous improvement, I asked the question, if there was one thing to change immediately, what would it be and why? And this really allows people to open up to you and voice their complaints. And you should note that all of the complaints are valid. You'll find things like hidden factories, constraints to the business, why things can't get done as fast as leadership wants it to get done. Things that you find all of those things like why do we have a meeting when we don't need a meeting? Why couldn't this just be a message or a memo? What does good look like inside of a record? Things like this. So that's what continuous improvement looks like. Then if I go back, you aggregate all of it, find the patterns, and you follow that workflow. Okay, I've completed this activity about 100 times effectively. I'm known for changing the quality management system, but you can't change it unless you collect feedback. And sometimes heads of quality get very strange about this. They want to limit the number of pages to an SOP. They don't care to solicit feedback. And they expect someone who has experiences like I do to look at an SOP and just make changes to it. Uh, I mean, that's one way to get everybody to hate you, particularly the user community if you don't understand their concerns or their feedback, and particular to any predecessors who have already put a program in place for whatever reason they built the requirements they did. This allows you also to understand the historical perspective of that, because after all, you don't want to repeat history. Don't be doomed to repeat the past mistakes. All right, nearly the last slide. Putting it all together. In parallel, you should be collecting business requirements while implementing the quality manual. You need to define the product in the product phase. That's critical to understand what regulations are applicable to you. Then define all of those regulations. From there, you'll be completing both a business gap assessment and a GMP gap assessment to identify any gaps to business user requirements or CGMP compliance. If there are gaps, I really recommend you manage them through a CAPA. If there aren't any gaps, which would be highly unusual, then you'll have already effective policies and procedures in place. That is all how you've implemented quality. Then training of staff occurs. That's how you instill quality. Execution of tasks occurs by individuals. That is also how quality is instilled because there's quality oversight component to it, checks and balances all the way through. And then for anything that happens outside of the norm, then we have the QMS checks, deviations, CAPAs, change controls. And that also is how quality is instilled. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Hope you got a lot out of it. As always, simplicity breeds compliance. Here were my references today: ICHQ 10, Quality by Delitala Volume 1, the Quality Manual, and Quality by Delitala Volume 4, Solve Problems Like a Pro, the universal approach available to all industries. Again, I want to thank you for your time and see you in the conference.